Really happy to be here and really thankful that you have spared time to join this session. Also, Dr. Eucharia will be handling some of the activities on the ground, the discussions, especially that she's there. So she will facilitate some of the conversations or discussions that we are going to have. So we thought to focus this final training session on making EIDM our culture. I know that over the last 10 months, you have all been involved in various activities as part of the project that Dr. Eucharia has been implementing. And you have therefore been involved in different activities, which have been the different aspects of this project. The conversation today is to get us to think about moving forward in terms of some of the things we've been doing under this project. How do we move forward into entrenching those in our day-to-day practices in our institutions, so that the things we have been involved in, the gains we've made over the last 10 months, do not end, with the end of this project, which is at the end of this year, basically this month. And so it's going to be an interactive conversation. As I've said, the purpose is to get us to think in terms of how do we move some of these things into the future? How do we extend some of the skills and knowledge that we have been part of, that we have participated in developing, like the tool you've developed? How do we extend that beyond this project? We are all here because we know that EIDM is important and plays a critical role in improving the effectiveness of development efforts, be they efforts by government, efforts by external funders, be they efforts by communities or different groups. And so EIDM is really about ensuring that the best available evidence is used in decision making. And I put this diagram here because I just wanted to remind us that when we talk about evidence use or EIDM, we are thinking about its use in the comprehensive policy-making process, which of course has ideally or in theory starts at agenda setting. And I'm saying that because the policy process is quite messy and sometimes it doesn't have a good place where it starts. But experts theorize it as to involve agenda setting where issues rise onto the political or public policy agenda. And the reason I put this chart here is that just to remind us that evidence needs to play a role at each of these stages, and that's what EIDM is about, that we are looking at evidence when we are, talking about how issues that have been neglected rise on the political agenda. But we are also looking at evidence when formulating policy options, so once governments decide that we want to address this issue, usually they'll move to formulating policy options. Evidence needs to play a central role in informing the options they come up with. And then, of course, importantly is implementation. And implementation in the policy-making process is often the area where not much happens, or rather a lot of countries in Africa have a lot of challenges in implementing policies, particularly to the level where they need to be implemented. So a lot of times our governments will have excellent policies, but when it comes to implementation, it looks like implementation is often a black box that many governments struggle with implementing policies, particularly optimally, to the level where they actually speak to the challenges that citizens are facing. And so what we're asking here is, what is the role of evidence, in supporting governments to implement and more effectively deliver on their promises? And I know one of you did mention the role of monitoring and evaluation, particularly monitoring. So I think evaluation comes at the evaluation stage, but monitoring is an important role of evidence at the implementation stage. So when we get to implementing programs, providing services, what role can evidence play there? And what types of evidence are even needed when governments are implementing policies? And then, of course, eventually is evaluating. So the reason why I had this diagram here is just to remind us that EIDM is really about ensuring that evidence is used at the whole cycle of the policymaking process. And just to flag that some of the research we've done in Kenya and Malawi, not in many countries, I think those two countries, has shown that government agencies will use evidence a lot at agenda setting, defining the problem, making the case for the problem to become important enough for governments to pay attention to it. A lot of evidence will be used. And then evidence somehow tends to disappear when you get to formulation of policies and implementation. Evidence tends to disappear. And so you don't get a good sense of what is being implemented. How well is it being implemented? What is being missed in the way this is being implemented? So again, just reminding us as evidence champions, as EIDM champions, to think comprehensively about the role of evidence in the EIDM process, so that we are not just focusing on evidence being used at agenda setting, but we are focusing on evidence being used at all these stages, when we are choosing policy options, when we are implementing, and also when we are evaluating what impact a policy has had.
So I feel so excited. I can't have enough of you. Yeah, so if we have comments, questions.
We should establish clubs that can be, whether the club can be virtual, so that the idea of EIDM should be inculcated into our youth before they get to the position of authority and policy making. Thank you.